Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have, of course, another great show for you today. What were you expecting? Hello, Niall Stanage. How you doing?
I am good, Robbie. And are you sorted out with your days of the week now? You're clear it's Wednesday?
I know today is Wednesday because today is the day of my showdown with Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky. We're doing a debate on big tech, good or bad, tonight in Washington, D.C. I don't know if there's still tickets left if you're interested in coming, but you can look for that online, and then it will eventually be posted online.
Surely already sold out with that all-star lineup, Robbie,
sure.
I would have thought. But anyway, that should be good.
Yes.
Coming up on Rising, CBS has selected a new anchor for the network's evening news show.
Plus, potential Democratic presidential candidate Rahm Emanuel says the U.S. should follow Australia's lead and ban social media for all teenagers. We'll discuss that.
And President Trump gave a speech on the economy in Pennsylvania yesterday evening. I'll be recapping that in my notes. But before we get to all of that, Robbie, lead us off. What is on your radar?
Here we go. The European Union has hit Elon Musk X with millions of dollars in fines, and conservatives are very angry about it. And in my view, they're right to be upset. Now, President Donald Trump isn't happy either. Here he was bashing the EU.
Whoa, that's a nasty one. I don't know. Elon has not called me to ask for help in that one. But no, that's a tough thing. I don't think it's right. No, I don't think it's right. I don't see, how they can do that. No, I'm not. I'll speak about it later. I'm going to get a full report on it. Look, Europe has to be very careful. They're doing a lot of things. We want to keep Europe Europe. Europe is going in some bad directions. It's very bad for the people. We don't want Europe to change so much. They're going in some very bad directions. That was a big thing.
I'm with Trump. European bureaucrats who depend on the U.S. for so much, including quite literally our money and our military, well, they should tread carefully here as they sanction an American company and an American businessman for practicing the American values of free speech. Western values, not just American values. Now, in the EU's telling, here is what X did wrong in violation of European policies. The EU ruled that X's blue checkmark system is deceptive because anyone can purchase a checkmark, which in their view enables scams, impersonations, and manipulations by malicious actors. The fine for that was $52 million. The EU also hit X for not making information on political ads available to researchers, which was another $40 million. And then the EU said that X obstructed independent researchers' access and limited scrutiny of information relating to political content and hate speech. The dollar amount for that, $46 million. Okay, but let's be real. The issue is that the bureaucrats of Brussels don't like that X refuses to restrict political speech that government deems hateful or misinformed, and they're looking for excuses to ding X without coming straight out and admitting that their problem is, in fact, the content. Does anyone think the government should be able to compel a social media site to collaborate with researchers who are desperately trying to prove that the site is more evil than ever? Well, of course not. Transparency is nice. Of course it's nice. We can encourage big tech to practice it. But at the end of the day, it's also important for social media sites to be able to protect our data and our speech from unfriendly authoritarian governments. Look no further than the massive push to erase anonymity online, something already well underway in the UK due to the Online Safety Act. If the bureaucrats get their way, well, you'll be fully identified in all your social media posts, and if you say anything unkind about a political figure or a group of people or about the system in general, well, they'll either come after you or they'll come after Elon, I guess. This is why, by the way, that there's no tech industry to speak of in Europe. All the most promising minds know that only the US's regulatory environment gives enough permission to innovators to be successful. But it doesn't need to be this way. I'd prefer if it wasn't America standing alone against China's foray into these technologies, social media, and also AI, don't forget AI. Europe should be right behind us. That's why I think Trump's right to say that, look, it's got to be a two-way street. Europe wants the U.S. to lead, for instance, when it comes to Russia-Ukraine. We're told not to turn our backs on Europe. Okay, that sounds fine to me, I agree. But it means European leaders have to play ball. Free speech matters to us. It's our First Amendment, and we're the superpower. The Western world wants to put on a brave face and work together to oppose despotism around the world. We can't have this one exception where a form of despotism to us is allowed to flourish within the coalition, particularly when it impacts American companies. Now look, in the scheme of things, these are not particularly steep fines. Elon can write a check. Best case scenario, maybe this was Brussels' symbolic attempt to shake their finger at Elon and I hope, move on from this singular crusade against free speech on X. Because if it escalates much beyond this, it could put the U.S.-European alliance in jeopardy. Elon might not be Trump's top political advisor anymore, but they are still buddies after all. I wanted to leave plenty of time for discussion here.
Yes. I feel there's a European-US chasm running right between us here. Look, I don't agree with that. I think you put the point of view very well. But first of all, the use of terms like despotism to describe what I would consider common sense measures to guard against things like defamation or incitement to violence, while at the same time permitting very free-flowing discussion or debate about political or public life issues, I think it is fine. You and I have different views on things like the appropriate strength of defamation laws and what should constitute that. The other point that I would disagree about is this is not a case that just came out of thin air where European bureaucrats were trying to invent a case just to nail Musk or nail X. There are these regulations in the EU about things like identifying advertisers, knowing who's paying for certain advertising that appears, for example. That was one of the three things that they were caught on. Similarly, the issue of verifying identities and not leaving a vulnerability where people can fraudulently purport to be other people. Those seem legitimate things to guard against, and whether I personally think they're legitimate or not, it does not seem unreasonable to me for a nation, or in this case a federation of nations, to have laws that companies which operate in their bailiwick have to comply with. I mean, the United States has those laws, and European or Asian or African countries can't just come here, set up operations and say, no, we should only be governed by the laws of our native country.
Well, that's true, but then we could say, okay, no more military dollars. Right? We can exercise our influence in the region to say that, sorry, free speech, a broader free speech ethos than what the EU is prepared to do. Again, not leaps and bounds different. To your point, despotism, yeah, maybe I'm being very zealous about my free speech, but yeah, it's not the same as communist China or Russia or something, or North Korea. But, and I agree with you on defamation and incitement, but it is notable, I think, that they didn't proffer examples. I mean, one can point to examples. There's a famous case of Facebook very much being guilty of a genocide of the Rohingya Muslim population because they failed to take down content that was very inflammatory about those people in Southeast Asia. Those examples were not being offered. What it was examples of, well, I mean, the verification thing is very tricky because, so X allows you to be verified, but you have kind of an anonymous handle or some nickname and it's not saying who you are. Again, in America, we say that's Publius is, offering opinions about what the founding documents should say, and it's James Madison, but you don't need to know that. Like, that's kind of part of our history. And then the whole collaborating with the researchers is probably the thing that bothers me most, because some of those researchers are just political activists who want the sites destroyed, including the Global Disinformation Index, a British nonprofit that labeled my site, Reason Magazine, a spreader of misinformation based on falsehoods, based on incorrect information. So, yes, they can more militantly force the sites to take down inflammatory content. We in the U.S. have a slightly different legal regime for social media, whereby in most cases, not all cases, but in most of the cases, the person who makes the post is the person liable for the post, not the platform. And we have these debates about whether that's a good system. That's not entirely the system, because if there's child pornography, it's not just the person who puts it up, you actually have to take that down under the law. If you have copyright violations, you get a time period. You have 30 days to take this down. I actually think that system is a little bit underrated and could be applied to some of these other edge cases that come up, that you'll get a takedown window and you can take it down. So that can allow sites or people on sites to be permissive, and then if they get in trouble, take it down.
Yeah, I mean, I take those points. I don't think those are invalid points to raise. I suppose my heckles tend to be raised by the portrayal of Europe by some of the kind of Elon people in this country, because, you know, they'll say, for example, somebody was jailed for a Facebook post, and you look at the Facebook post and it's somebody encouraging others to, like, burn a hotel that migrants are in or something. It's like, that's not, you know, that's obvious.
I mean, I think the best criticism of Elon or of the people making this argument that I've seen on social media is that, well, the stand against the European Union has been very, you know, bold and courageous by Elon, in my view. The stand against Brazil was like that. But where's this similar strident defense of free speech when China or India or someone else says, hey, we want this taken down?
Yeah, certain countries are too big for Elon to take on, I think. That's basically the problem, or the markets are too big. Up next, a potential Democratic presidential candidate says that the US should follow Australia's lead and ban social media for teens. We'll be right back to discuss that.